Hello and welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlow Artist. I'm the moderator of the program. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hello, I'm Katherine Whittington. I'm currently transitioning from the role of assistant principal at West Yadkin Elementary to interim principal at Forbush Elementary. This is my 11th year in education, and you can follow me on Twitter at educate8withme.
Congratulations, Catherine, and
you.
we're so glad to have you here.
Great. Good evening. My name is Ashley Basnight, and I'm the Career Development Coordinator with Dare County Schools. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I've been in education since 1992. However, I did take 10 years off when my kids were little, so I'll probably never retire. You can follow me on Twitter at Ashley_Basnight.
Awesome. Glad to have you as a special guest co-host as well.
Thank you.
I'm Clint Todd. I have been in the profession for 15 years now and happily teaching science at J.H. Rose High School in Greenville, North Carolina. I'm currently the Farm Bureau District Pitt County Schools Teacher of the Year and also the Northeast Region Teacher of the Year for Borough's Welcome Fund. And I've been happy to serve in those capacities, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you tonight.
We're glad to have you and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. My Twitter handle, by the way, is Todd, Todd, tackles _.
And is it me, Marlow?
It is.
All right. And I am Jeff Taylor. I represent Catawba County on the Catawba County Board of Education. Prior to going on the board in 2020, I served as a teacher and a principal at 3 different schools in our district, 1 middle school and 2 high schools. And so 2020 began a different journey in education for me. It's been an eventful year, I guess would be the best way to put it. But thank you for having me again, and I look forward to tonight.
So glad to have you here as a special guest co-host, and we appreciate the various perspectives that you will bring to this conversation. For this episode of Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we are chatting with Representative Donna White from North Carolina House District 26. She's here to discuss a variety of educational topics as we continue to unpack the budget, discuss Leandro, and more. Representative White, thank you so much for joining us here on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Thank you so much for having me, Marlow. It's an honor to be invited, and I'm so glad that things worked out with the schedule so I could be here. It's been very nice to meet all of the panelists tonight as we were doing our pre-show warm-up. And congratulations to Clint Todd for being Teacher of the Year. And it's amazing being supported by Borough's Welcome and the Farm Bureau. That is fantastic. So congratulations.
It really is fantastic, and we do appreciate you being here with us. So, Representative White, you started your experience as a public official, an elected school board, as an elected school board member with Johnston County Public Schools. What prompted you to run for the Johnston County Board of Education?
Well, that's a very interesting question that you would ask, Marlow, because I really didn't plan on running for the Board of Education. I had served in the capacity for 13 years prior to running as the high school advisory chair. And it was in our county, in Johnston County, we had a very active advisory committee for all of our different school levels, elementary, middle, and high school. So I had served as chair for 13 years. Even though my child had already graduated, they continued to ask me to stay on. So I had that experience under my belt. I had served 15 years. Now, some of this is simultaneously because I'm really not this old. I like your opening statement, Ms. Basnight. But anyway, I served 15 years on the Clayton, my town's planning board. And I had served 15 years on the Board of Adjustment as chair and also vice chair of the planning board. So I had those experiences under my belt. And for about like I said, some of those things were simultaneous, but I had been asked probably for 5 to 6 years to run for the school board. Well, because I had a child in the school system, I didn't feel like it was important for me to do that at that time. I just think, I personally feel like that it's better if you don't have a child in the system, then you can be more, you can look at the bigger picture, not just what's affecting your child. So I just kept saying, no, I couldn't do that, but I would just keep serving as the advisory chair if they wanted me to, which they wanted me to. So, but finally one day I was no longer, I felt like I had really stayed on the advisory council as long as I needed to. And, but I guess I had a weak moment and somebody called and said, we really want you to run for the school board this year. And I said, okay. that was it. I really had not planned to do that. So I filed and I was elected in 2004. And I remained on the school board for 12 years and went from the school board to the General Assembly. So I left the school board in November of 16 and was sworn in mid-January 17.
And able to bring all of that experience as a school board member serving 3 terms to the North Carolina General Assembly, which is very helpful to be able to have that local context. So last year, Representative White, was a very busy year for education here in North Carolina. What would you say were some of the successes that the General Assembly was able to accomplish as it relates to education?
I've got my cheat notes because I think we did a lot. So if you see me looking to the side at my notes, I'm cheating. Well, first of all, and I do serve, I'm not a chair of the Education Committee because I'm chair of Health and Human Services. I'm a registered nurse, so I'm chair of Health and Human Services and Policy and Appropriations. But I am a member of the Education Committee and have been since I've been in the General Assembly since 2017. But this year we did the biggest funding appropriations for the education system than we've been able to do for a very long time. So I think appropriations, which will be a 4.3% increase the first year of the biennium, and then I think it's a 4.1% increase the second year of the biennium. So that is significant. That's significant money. So one of the biggest things I think we did is that we've allocated $100 million to the low wealth schools areas so that they can give supplements to their teachers and give raises in addition to the raises that we've given for classified staff. So things that sometimes the local school board does. So with low wealth areas, they don't always have that tax base to do that. So this is $100 million that will go into those areas that don't have that tax base so that they can actually give supplements to retain their teachers and also to give their classified staff some extra bonuses so that they can continue to keep those folks. So I think that's one of the biggest things we did in addition to the overall huge budget. Some of the other things that we did, of course, we were able to give for all classified staff, we were able to give a $13 increase their minimum wage to $13 for the first year of the biennium and $15 for the second year of the biennium. So I think that is almost a double of what they were making before. So that's huge. I anticipated that you would ask me this question, so I did make a little list here. Some of the more significant things I think that we did too is we held harmless. We had the CARES Act funding that we were able to, if you remember, the speaker assigned 4 different pillars of concern. Education was one of them, Health and Human Services, local and state government, and then the other one, economy. But this was like during 2020. And so when we first got the first appropriations of CARES Act money. And so what we were able to do is hold all public schools in North Carolina harmless, ADM harmless, meaning that when the fall of 2020 came, the public school system should have they would be getting appropriations based on the number of kids they had on the 20th day, as you all know that. Well, that has been held harmless now, and we put this in with the additional American Rescue Plan, the APR money. We've been able to hold all school systems harmless for an indefinite period of time, at least through the biennium. So I think that's very significant. The other thing that was very important to me, because in Johnston County, because of where we're located, we're right southeast of Raleigh. And my district is the fastest growing district in the state. Yes, I did beat Senator Rabin. He wanted Brunswick County to be the fastest growing, but I am the fastest growing. So, and what that means is that I am growing 500 people a month and have been since 2017 when I was elected. So my district that was, about 2,200 people in the late 90s is now my town is 27,000 people. It was 2,200 in the late 90s. My district Johnston County has 210,999 people based on the August census. Of course, it's more now because I'm growing 500 people a month, but my district has 110,000 of those people, 120,000 of those people. And there are 2 other representatives in the county. So I've got over half of the total population of the county in my district. So that's significant. And that being said, we have always, for probably since I-40 opened up in the early to mid 90s, we have been a magnet for children with IDD issues. And so because of the locale very near to Duke and UNC, it has special programs for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So Johnston County has kind of been a magnet. So we've had about a 16% budgetary expenditure for children with IDD. But our cap at the state, when I was at the school board, was it was between 11 and 12%. We've been able to get it up to 12.75% 2 years ago. And it didn't get passed though, so I think it's still stayed at 12.5. But anyway, we did put it in the budget 2 years ago. So this year we were able to get it up to 13%. Now, for some counties, that will pretty much take care of everything. Johnston County still has a 16%. So, but it's still every little percentage point helps us a great deal. So I think that raising that cap for IDD was very, very important. Of course, the teacher pay, we were able to do significant increases for the teachers, as well as bonuses for all staff. Obviously, anytime you can let people know, especially when you've come through the kind of trauma that we've all come through in the last year and a half, 2 years, it's important to let people know that you appreciate them. And we appreciate them before, but sometimes we just don't always have the money to show it. But we had given really good raises even in 2019, but of course that budget didn't get passed. The one big thing for me, of course, I'm a nurse and I'm concerned always about the number of school nurses in the school. And I have had a bill for that each year, but unfortunately there are issues related to that. They're probably too long with this conversation, but it's not about the amount of money we can put in. It's about the amount of money that the teachers can get on the pay scale that they have to be on for beginning teachers. And to be a school nurse, you can't just go in as a beginning nurse. You've got to have years of experience, which means you've already got a higher salary somewhere else. So it's really hard. It's a very complicated thing, but we're working on it. We're just trying to figure that one out.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that, Representative White, because that is a big concern. I actually had a conversation with a nurse supervisor just today. Said that even with some of the federal dollars, that they have not been able to increase the number of nurses serving because people don't want to take those short-term positions.
Exactly.
They want to make sure they have that stability.
Well, when you're a beginning teacher, I think probably in most of your schools, or at least it was my experience in Johnston County, the beginning teachers had lots of tutoring. They had their own. We had like one central office person that just really went around every day and worked with the new teachers. And so for about 5 years, new teachers are on a learning curve and they get a lot of extra attention and a lot of, extra assistance. But so they can come in as a new graduate out of college. But that's not the way it is for registered nurses. When you go into a public school setting or any school setting and you are the nurse, most of the time you're not only covering that school, but you're covering maybe 3 to 7 other schools. So, but you are the one healthcare provider that can address not necessarily mental health issues, but of course you can do that as well. But anything that is an emergency, we can call EMS, but you know, sometimes EMS can't get there any quicker than they can get there, especially in a growing county or a county that's not growing. I think sometimes the more moderate counties may have a better chance of being able to have better response. But it's just very important for the nurse to have the skill set that she needs. And when you come out of nursing school, usually you go into a facility like a hospital where you're going to have a team that can help you and answer questions. But when you're a school nurse, you're it. So school nurses have to come into that position as a trained, experienced nurse. And when you are a trained, experienced nurse and you have to go to work for a first year teacher salary, it just doesn't happen that often. Most of the time when that does happen, it's a nurse that has been a nurse for a while. She maybe has children now and she wants to be with children more. She wants to have that afternoon open and she wants to have maybe some summer vacation. And that's the kind of nurse that sometimes goes into a school setting and is okay with the lower salary. But again, that is not necessarily what we always see. And that's why we have a shortage. And I've worked with DPI now since I've been in the General Assembly for 5 years to try to see what we could do about that. But thus far, we have not been able to address that particular issue. So, but what we did this time, we put $40 million into increasing the number of school psychologists, because we know with the pandemic, there has been a great stress on the emotional aspect of our students and our teachers and our staff. So it's not just that, but we can't provide all of y'all psychological help. But we do need to focus on those kids. So we put in an additional $40 million so that schools that could get the psychologists, and we know that they're not real plentiful either. But I will just put in here right now that one of my biggest issues going into this next biennium, especially if I get reelected in November of 22, is mental health. Is just, that's going to be one of my big ones I've had my list going and I've really got a lot done in the last 5 years, but mental health will be one of the biggest targets that I will be focusing on next. And of continuing, of course, to work on the school health thing. I think one of the other big things is that we have defined, I was the only active school board member appointed by Governor McCrory in 2013 to serve on the Safer Schools Task Force that he was forming. And then Governor Cooper has reappointed me twice, and I'm still serving on the Safer Schools Task Force. And as you know, we have done a lot of things to improve the safety of our schools, inside the school, outside the school, in the emotional environment, the psychological environment, and the pure safety with law enforcement, security, et cetera. So now we have, with this budget, we were able to give additional money to the Safer Schools Center so that they can establish a training center for school staff, teachers, and so forth. That will be kind of like an academy that you can go to get additional training in school safety. So I think that's going to be very significant too. One of the other things is we put a lot of money into the R&R buildings. In other words, we've got to look at the infrastructure of our schools. So many of them are very, very old. Some of them are very young, but they've had an influx of students and they're outgrowing their ability to, we've got in Johnson County, we have about 200, I may be a little bit off because it's not current as of this week, but about 270 mobile units. So that's just, it's not to say that kids can't learn from mobile units. And I have a lot of teachers that say, don't do away with the mobile units. I get more teaching done in those than I do in the general classroom. But it is an issue, and especially with the issue of tornadoes and all those things, I always worry about the safety issue. But we have put a lot of money into that infrastructure for the local schools. We've increased the North Carolina Promise tuition. So those are just some of the big highlights that I can think of that I thought might be important for you all. Now, if you want more detail, I've got the whole budget here right with me. I could read all that out too. But those are some of the biggies that were concerns for me as a school board member, that I am very glad that we were able to do that this year.
Thank you so much for giving us that download, and there's a lot for us to unpack in there, Representative White. What questions do we have for the representative?
Boy, I'm really good.
I'll go ahead, Ashley.
Actually, I was just going to make a quick comment. I know after just listening to you, I was shaking my head and nodding, especially when you were talking about the mental health aspect. I know this last 2 years to be this far into education, I've been doing this for a while, but it feels like I've even aged 20 years in the last 2 years, just the constant doing this. But one of my big concerns is really our kids. I'm in a middle school, and certainly my position as a career development coordinator, I'm not actually working closely with students and guidance, with the mental health aspect. But I do know the kids are coming to my room and wanting to eat lunch in my room, and just listening to the conversations that they're having. And they, include me in some of those conversations. It's heartbreaking. So I just wanted to say thank you for supporting the funding, really, for addressing some of these needs that we're going to be seeing in the next couple of years. So thank you very much for that. I'm kind of curious, what do you think? What are some things that we can be looking for, or how should we be handling this the next couple of years?
Well, I think I'm not a psychologist, and I don't have that kind of background, so I'm not going to give any kind of step-by-step what we can do in that regard. But I do think that as much time as that, if you have a time in your classroom, if you're a teacher, or if you have time, and if you're in another position, that just stopping on a regular basis and just looking the kids in the eyes. I know that we're masked, and I know we have to be concerned about social distancing, but I think the kids just need to hear a lot of people on a daily basis just saying, how are you today? Tell me about what did you do last night? And even if they just said, sit on the couch, at least they had somebody to tell that to. I think so many times we just, I don't know, children have just always been my weak spot. I was a pediatric nurse. And I just know that children of all ages just need to have somebody to just stop and just ask them how they're doing. Or what did you do fun last night? Or what did you do that made you upset last night when you went home? You've got a little scour on your face, or just something just to address the fact that they are a human being. They're not another number. There's not another person in that line. They're not another person in that seat, just another person in the seat. They are actually a living child. And where we are having trouble with this pandemic, it's, I think sometimes we feel like the children are already adults, and they're not. And I think when we look at each child, and we think now for 2 years, if you're 5 years old and you were in, kindergarten, and 2 years of your life has been spent behind a mask, and your teachers and everybody else. And I'm a registered nurse. So I'm not getting back into that pro or con. I'm just saying it is what it is. I mean, I understand why we have it, but I'm just saying it is what it is. And when you've seen this much of people, on Halloween, you put a mask on because you don't want people to see what you look like, or you want to transfigure yourself. So we have to realize for what is stressful to us, and we hate to put that mask on every day, but we do, and all that. And as a nurse, I don't think about it because I'm so used to wearing a mask anyway. But to a child to be wearing something every day, that when they see themselves in the mirror or they see themselves in a reflection of something that they walk by, they're seeing somebody that they don't really know. And when they see their teacher and especially those kids that went into kindergarten that 2 years ago, they never knew what it was to be the teacher and be with the teacher and do all those fun things that you do as a kindergarten child. So I just feel like we just need to be reminded every day that our children are children, and just remind ourselves to stop and just smell a pansy with them or do something. Just let them know you're there for them.
Yeah, I agree. I love on them. I hug them.
Exactly. Hugging is great. And I do too. I just say we'll social distance in a minute, but I'm going to get a hug first.
Thank you.
I'd like to follow up with a question, Representative White, and it kind of goes along with what Ashley said. First of all, thank you. The budget this year coming on the school board from the state and also the federal dollars we got made it a lot easier to do some of the things to help improve learning, to reward our staffs, certified and classified staffs alike. But one of the overriding just issues that we have dealt with in Catawba County, and I don't think we're unique as a board, is just how we, number one, keep kids in school. Because even though our quick move to virtual learning, I think was impressive and it filled a need at the time, I think we're finding out, and you alluded to this in your answer, that we need those kids in school. We're grappling with how we keep them safe. Parents and teachers and community members are more involved than ever. We had a meeting in August that was 5.5 hours long. We had 64 members of the public that came and spoke. And so how are you as a state legislature, how is the partnership with the school board association and their lobbyists in dealing with you to communicate some of these issues that we're dealing with at the local boards to you guys in the General Assembly?
Thank you for that question, Jeff. That's a very good question. I have a very good rapport with the state board with the state board for the school board associations, and so we talk a lot, and I think that they certainly know that my position is always about keeping schools open. I know, like you said, we had to do something. We didn't know what to do, and we've all been kind of trying things and learning things as we've gone through this last 2 years, and that's been true in health as well, certainly in health. But I believe that, and I know that the governor I just was reading something that he said yes, but I guess I'm not so sure. I read so much news right now. I don't know when I read it, but it was in the last 24 hours that, I think his intent is to keep the schools open. And I know that the parents want that. I meet with a lot of parent groups per their request, and a lot of parent groups come to my office. So I meet with them in my constituent base, but I also have parent groups that come from across the state to meet with me on a regular basis. So I know that the parents want their kids to stay in school. I know that, some of them have an additional request that they would like to have in order to keep their kids in school. But I believe that if we all want that somehow we're going to work out a way. And I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to say that I do, but I do know that based on what I heard from teachers from my district and from across the state, there were very few kids that actually attended the remote classes. And when I heard that, it just broke my heart, because I thought, I bet the kids that needed it the most were not in the remote sessions. And And, we've got a couple of thousand or so that we don't even, now the latest that I've heard is that we still don't know where some of those kids are. I assume that they may have moved, maybe out of state, or they went back to, maybe the state they came from or whatever. But we had several thousand. It was between 2,500 and 3,200 students that we really did not actually know what happened to them during COVID. That is tragic. And it's also tragic to think that we know because of the Backpack Buddy program, that a lot of kids go home on Friday afternoon. And we think because we send them the food home that they're going to come back to school on Monday nourished. But what we know is that they come back to school on Monday like they've lived in Somalia, and they throw up their breakfast because that's the first thing they've had since Friday. So when we can just measure the lack of support that some kids are getting if they're not in that school system, not only for food, but for guidance, for oversight, for all the things, love, that hug, that kiss, whatever that a child needs. So anything that I can do with the state board, anything that I can do with making my position known as a legislator to keep our school doors open, and do whatever we've got to do to make that happen.
Thank you for that answer, and thank you for all that you've done in working with your colleagues there to support our educators.
Thank you.
I have a comment and then maybe a follow-up question that's a little bit different. I would like to say thank you as well, because I appreciate the fact that it seems like you understand how funding can really impact schools. And I would agree with you that my district is definitely prioritizing making sure that our kids and our staff are able to stay in our schools and stay safely. I think that the issue that's going to pop up along with that is what would make us have to close are going to be staffing issues. So more faculty and staff who have COVID related illness or quarantine, having to be out, being understaffed in terms of substitutes. And so I think that is something that funding can take care of. So again, thank you for your attention to that.
I think that the CDC has helped us with that a little bit as well, because they have changed that time frame from, I think, 10 days now to 5. And I have been talking with Secretary Kinsley, who, by the way, is very much a mental health kind of person, interested in mental health a lot. So he and I, before I knew that he was going to be the secretary, before he knew he was going to be the secretary, we had some conversation this past summer about things that we wanted to do to improve that system. And then all of a sudden he's in a position that makes it even more interesting that we had already talked. So I do believe that he's very interested in that arena and will help us with that as well. So thank you for making those comments. Did you have a question? I think I may have jumped in.
I do also have a question. It's a little unrelated though. And I also wanted to say it warms my heart to hear that you're a registered nurse. My mother is also a registered nurse. She's recently retired. But one of the things that she always instilled in me as a value was that she had a wide variety of different patients that she always served. And she made it a point to me to make sure that I respect everybody, when I was growing up, and still to this day, it's important for me to make sure that I understand my students, that I'm respecting my students, and also the other peer, my faculty members as well. So my question is kind of in line with that. I know that the Leandro case was one of the items that was up for discussion with you. And so in the Leandro case, many of the 5 original counties, I think that were a part of that case, their demographics were uniquely different from the state average demographics. So we would see higher than average minority populations. I think the last data I looked at, Halifax County had a population that was about 77% Black. Robeson County, 42% Native American. And I used to teach Upward Bound with that program in Halifax County. And I often heard from the other teachers who were part of that program and from the students themselves is that sometimes that they felt a little bit forgotten about, or that they were left out of the conversation, or they didn't have the resources to meet their own needs. And so we have programs like Upward Bound to help with that. And along those same lines, that really broke my heart to hear things like that are happening at different schools. So my question would be, I know you mentioned mental health and taking care of our students. A lot of times my students, particularly my students of color, often cite not feeling worthy or heard as a big part of their own personal mental health. And so in a situation where we have the Leandro case that has taken for a really long time to see more action happen, what would you say to people on how we resolve the optics of that situation, the length of time it's taken, and making sure that any students within the counties that could be impacted actually feel worthy as a result?
That is a very good question, Mr. Todd. And this issue has been going on, I think, about 20 years now. So it's crossed, both parties and lots of people that are probably not in education anymore, and young people that are coming into education. What the General Assembly did this year is chipped away at some of the issues related to in the Leandro case. Obviously, as a seated representative, and because the court and the Attorney General has put a stay on this, as a seated elected official, I don't know any more than you know about this. I'll just be frank. But on the other hand, it would be inappropriate for me to I guess, think outside the box, because I'm not sure. I wasn't there for the court case, and but I do understand that at this point it is stayed. And so the General Assembly is not acting on it at this moment, but that I know of. But there are higher levels in the General Assembly than me, so that there may be folks working on it. But what I do know is that because of the Leandro case, and because of the timing, and because we had extra money this year, there was a real effort to address some of those points that you've made. And I mentioned that we put the $100 million in so that those 6 districts those 6 counties and other low wealth counties would be able to have access to additional funding for things that they've never had access to before. So that in itself was significant. In the biennium, in the first year of the biennium, there will be a 7% increase in the general fund and a 10% increase in the general fund for the second year of the biennium. In addition to that, there's about $600 million in addition to the general fund that we're also putting in to the education fund, so that we can address some of those issues that has been brought up over the years with Leandro. So if additional funding will address the issue, I do believe that at the end of this biennium, we are going to see major improvements in that arena. And again, I'm going to be very frank here. If additional money will do it, this is our 2 years to prove that. And I think once if that's proven that it really does make a difference, then that gives us, when I say us, the state of North Carolina, the momentum and the once you have, in my mind, this is like a pilot study. And anytime you have a pilot study that proves something works, and you can do it, you can find the resources to continue it. So I think this additional money that we've gotten this year that we were putting into education will help some of these issues that have been concerns. But now we can do that. We can call it our pilot study and move forward. And if money will address it, then then I think that we're there. Now, I do know, because of being on the school board for a long time, that sometimes we received money, but we just didn't have what the money could buy to, because we were not growing. Our county was beginning to grow, but we were not growing. And we still have another section of Johnson County, Eastern Johnson County, that has like an I-95 corridor group of schools that still struggle. And they are very similar in nature to situations that we see in the northeast of North Carolina. So I'm very familiar with that type of issues in our school system. And we've done some very creative things. And we developed an innovation academy model. It's been very, very successful when we can actually take children that have a lot of issues other than just needing an education and deal with those issues one child at the time every day with a group, with a team. And that's kind of what the Innovation Academy does. So I think that with money and with if we can convince people to want to move to the northeastern part of our state and to work as a pilot in a pilot study, I think that would be one of the ideas that we could do. And with this additional money that we've got right now, that might be it. I haven't heard any hardcore rumors, but I've heard some hints that that might be a way that we can possibly get some folks to move to at least go on the mission deal. I'll just call it that. You know, people like to go on mission trips, even if they're short term. So this would be a mission trip to really help some of those students that really need that day-to-day additional help other than just the how to read and write. But it's and do science and all those other things, but you know that they need that infrastructure and that the social determinants of it. I talk about social determinants of health all the time, so I'll just say we need some social determinants of education. So I think that would be a model that we could use as a pilot.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your comments and for considering like the whole child and their needs, and not just simply instructional needs as well. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for your genuine commitment to students, to staff, to their mental health, for keeping them in schools. So thank you for that. We commend you for that. These lovely co-panelists have taken all my questions. They're great. So I'm going to kind of shift gears and ask you a question about professional development. The letters training. I know that Johnson County is in cohort 2 for that training, so they were supposed to start this month. And I was wondering if teachers were able to start on time. How's that going? And also, what would you say to teachers that are going to start this work very soon in February or even next semester?
I am going to be very honest and say that I do not know the timeline. But I do know that I have heard from a few teachers and they're very excited about the program. And I'm excited to find out what they are going to be learning. Unfortunately, I have been a little bit buried in health for the last month. We've got some new assignments that have just been made for new committees, and I have been placed on those new committees because we are in a we've been for the last month, we've been in what we call the pro forma session, meaning that we haven't had votes. But because I live very close to Raleigh, I am on the pro forma team. So I have been going to I was in the General Assembly every day last week except one, conducting session and all those. The sessions don't last that long, excuse me. Once people know you're there, all of the groups want to come in and talk. And when you're the only legislator on the whole legislative office building, floor 3, your office is inundated. So I have been, that is not an excuse, but I have not invested the time that I should have anticipated that question. I'm sorry, I have not, but, okay. But I have heard positive things that people are excited, but I don't actually know the timeline of I know it's coming up soon, but I'm not sure about the timeline.
Thank you.
But I have heard that they are very excited.
Good deal.
Representative White, can we talk about what would it take to reinstate master's pay in North Carolina? That's an ongoing conversation. Are you all planning to do that in 2022? Is that something that you all can address? Because there's a lot of support in our state around being able to retain our teachers if we could reinstate master's pay.
During the last, when we were developing the budget, there was a lot of discussion in regards to that. And And because I did not serve on the Education Appropriations Committee, I don't know what the final word was. That I just know that it is continuing to be discussed. And I would hope that, I know that it will not happen until the next biennium, obviously, because the budget is done now, and that, other than some technical corrections and putting a whole new concept in that has not been voted on in the budget, won't happen. But technical corrections usually just, if you didn't like, if you had, say for instance, you were funding one school for something, but you forgot to put 2 schools more in that want the same thing, you can add those, but you can't add a new whole concept. So I know that it will be something that we would need to address when those that are reelected and those new people that come in November 22. So I think it's something that is going to continue to be out there. There's pro and con conversations, of course, in the education committee regarding that. I think that, pretty much across the state, when people get their master's degree in anything, you usually anticipate a raise in your salary. So hopefully that will continue to be discussed and come out on a positive high note in 23.
Are there any other pressing questions for Representative White? We really appreciate you joining us, Representative White. I know that you said that mental health was going to be a priority for you in 2022. What are some other priorities that you could say as it relates to education?
Obviously, the mental health, just overall general mental health, because I really feel like that we don't have enough hospital beds for when people come into the general hospitals. They don't need to be be in an emergency room for months because they don't have a bed for them. So this year we were able to get, I was able to get Johnston Health in my county 5 additional beds. So they will be building those soon. And then we got 2 hospitals in Harnett County, some additional beds. We used the Dorothea Dix money to do that. We finally ended up using all the Dorothea Dix money, but we did it for those 3 hospitals. And then we were able to use some of the SCIF money to finish out what they needed to get those beds done. But I think that we don't only need, but because one of the problems is that once someone comes into the hospital emergency room with a mental health issue, many times they can stay there for 6 months because there's no bed to put them in a facility, or in a rehab facility. So that is a big issue for me. As far as, and of course that sometimes that's students, so it's not just always adults, so that needs to be corrected. We need, of course, as we've already talked, trying to increase the number of school psychologists and to have some type of incentive that will encourage folks to actually accept the position. We've got the money to hire them. We just need for them to accept the position. School nurses, again, I will continue to work with the Board of Nursing, the Department of Public Instruction, and the School Board Association to try to address that issue. But like I said, that's a difficult one because of the obvious reasons. I think teacher recruitment is, we had a really good program in Johnson County, and I'm not sure if it's still functioning, so I won't speak to it, but we brought students or teachers in from other parts of the country, and it was just an amazing opportunity for a lot of teachers, and they stayed here. I think the current climate that we've been in for the last 2 years has discouraged people from wanting to go into not only teaching, but also nursing. We have got a major nursing shortage across North Carolina, and we've just had a major study done by the Shep Center. It's called NurseCast, and it has demonstrated the shortage that's going to even get greater by 2033. And I know that is the same thing in education. So we've just got to be more creative, and that's one of the things that I will continue to work on this year or through the next biennium. I think we have to. I know that that Catherine Truitt is very concerned about accountability and how we get to what we do about testing and accountability. You know, I know that the kids, I just can't imagine a child having to take an end of grade test right now. You know, I mean, it's just, how can they do that? But, you know, how do we test them to know where they need to go? And I know from the things that I've read is that, you know, we're already seeing that kids are, you know, maybe 2 years behind, and that makes sense because they've not been in school, you know. So I think it's going to take some real creativity to figure out how to assess these children, and then develop some accountability to be able to get them from one point to the other. And y'all are the educators, so you know much more about that than I do. But I think that's certainly something that I'm very, very interested in knowing how can we really know where a child is and then know how to get them from where they are to where they need to be.
So much
So
for us
those are some of the top things on my list.
So many things for us to continue to really dig into as we work to make North Carolina a beacon for education here in the nation. So we want to thank you so much, Representative White, for joining us for a great conversation about various topics related to education. And you do have an open invitation to come back on the program as we continue to discuss what's going on.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful evening. I've enjoyed it.
We've enjoyed
Thank
chatting
you.
as well.
Thank you all for what you do every day.
Awesome. We would also like to thank our audience so very much for watching our program. We hope that you will engage with us on our social media platforms. Please like our Facebook page. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHillTeachers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, tarhillteachers.com, and on all of our social media platforms. Please use our hashtag TarHillTeachers so we can find all of your great comments. We'd like to thank our wonderful group of co-hosts for joining us for this conversation: Katherine Whittington, Ashley Basnight, Clint Todd, and Jeff Taylor. We'd also like to thank our virtual audience so much for joining us, and we'd like to thank our special guest once again for joining us, Representative Donna White from North Carolina House District 26. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.